You are back with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So England are into the final of the 2021 Euros. It's those useless cunts' first major international final since they won the World Cup in '66, I think it was. They're playing Italy in the final on Monday, I think it is. And they're going to win 100%. I know they're going to win because during the group stage, when they were just sort of plodding along, I had a funny feeling they would pull it all together because they weren't conceding goals. So I think it was the second or the third match of the group stage. I went to put some money on England to win the Euros. And because I'm in India, all my betting accounts are blocked. But I can call up and place phone bets. I just couldn't be bothered. I was like, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow turned into a week. And now here we are at the final. And Boyle, again, is going to miss out on some cashola. It's 100%. This has happened to me so many fucking times. I just know how it's going to play out. There's been so many times I've gone to put a bet on and got distracted and then thought to myself, I'll put it on later. And then the next thing I know, I haven't put it on later. The odds have come right in. And then I'm like, well, it's not worth it now. And I still don't bet on them. And then they win. And that's what's going to happen here. I don't want it to happen. Nothing is worse to an Australian than a cocky pom whose sporting team has just won something. They are the worst. And I mean, poms are barely tolerable under the best of circumstances. But when they've won something, they are the worst. This is going to be worse than when they won the Rugby World Cup in 2000 and fucking whatever it was, 4 or 5. When Johnny Wilkinson kicked that fucking field goal to beat Australia in the final. I didn't really give a fuck about them beating Australia too much because I go for the New Zealand rugby team. But after they won, listening to the English supporters talk about the game like they kicked the fucking winning goal, it was hard to listen to. This will be worse than that. It'll be worse than Andy Murray winning fucking Wimbledon. That annoyed the shit out of me though, that fucking dork winning Wimbledon. It wasn't even so much I didn't want Andy Murray to win Wimbledon. It was I didn't want anyone from England to win Wimbledon ever again. It all goes back to Tim Henman, I think, because the Poms only had Tim Henman and fucking what's his name? And Greg Rudzetsky, I think his name was, but he was really Canadian. So there was only really Tim Henman for the English in the tennis. And every year the commentators would talk up Tim Henman's chances of winning Wimbledon. And pretty much every year he'd get knocked out by the 4th round. And it was very satisfying. And then Andy Murray came along and it was like, no, this guy could possibly win. Because deep down, even the English knew Tim Henman was never going to win fucking Wimbledon. And then Murray came along and he was good, but he was like a little fucking baby, like a little brat. He was listening to his mum and shit, throwing tantrums. And Australians immediately hated him and wished nothing but the worst for him. And he lost a few finals. He was up against some tough players though. He had the Fed there, the York, Nadal. He was swinging with the big boys. And then he clicked into gear and he had that good year or two and he won Wimbledon. And it was a bitter pill to swallow. As you can tell, I still haven't recovered from Andy Murray winning Wimbledon. So it's probably going to be worse than that. It's definitely going to be worse than Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome winning all those Tour de France's. It's even going to be worse than fucking England beating New Zealand in the Cricket World Cup final. Actually, it's not going to be worse than that for me. That was hard. That was a hard day. That was a real fucking tough day because it was Federer versus Djokovic on one channel in the Wimbledon final and it was England versus New Zealand in the Cricket World Cup final. And at one stage it looked like New Zealand were going to win and Federer was going to beat Djokovic. He had 2 match points as well. Fuck, it hurt. And I remember during that I thought to myself, what if the worst possible thing happens here and England win and Djokovic wins? And that's what happened. Fucking Ben Stokes fucked us. Actually, England have been winning a lot of shit lately. What the fuck is going on? Australia used to dominate England in just about everything, but now England are dominating Australia hard. I know when it started as well. It was the 2012 fucking Olympics, or just before the 2012 London Olympics, because England just started pumping money into their athletes, and they had a really good Olympics, that one, and Australia had the worst one of all time, and we just never bounced back. But all that being said, I do hope England win the Euros, and that's based purely on the amount of listeners I have in England compared to the amount of listeners I have in Italy. And fuck Italy. Whose side were they on in World War II? With fucking Mussolini. Anyway, my prediction is 1-0 to England. England will win the Euros, and the English people will not shut the fuck up about it until England is knocked out in the group stage of the next World Cup. That's my prediction. Anyway, that's it for tonight. If you're enjoying the podcast, share it around with your friends, and I'll see you the fuck later.